and welcome back to the Marketing Chat Room. I am on today with David Young. He is a LinkedIn content and business coach and podcast host of the Real You podcast. He and I connected over LinkedIn about both our loves of LinkedIn and our journeys in running. So welcome, David. Super excited to have you on today.
Yeah, thanks, Kayla. Appreciate the connection and really appreciate you having me on the show.
Yeah, absolutely. If you don't mind kicking us off with just a brief intro on who you are and what you do.
Yeah, no, thanks. I started creating content on LinkedIn about 2 years ago. I launched a full-time online coaching business almost exactly a year ago. Prior to that, I worked over 20 years in corporate. I did sales, customer service, quite a few finance roles, and a little bit of data analysis. Never really found a ton of satisfaction in the traditional 9 to 5 world. And when I found content creation, I had found like calling, so to speak, something I was good at, enjoyed, and could help other people do. So it's kind of where we ended up.
Yeah, that's awesome. And I know you and I talked a little bit about your driveway moment in 2023 when you kind of had that realization that you wanted to do something different with your life. Can you tell that story for us?
Yeah, so I was trying to motivate my oldest son. He's 15 now. He was 13 at the time. And he's a lot like me, good athlete, played a lot of sports, kind of focused on basketball as he got older. So I was trying to motivate him to be more aggressive. He would be aggressive with me, like one-on-one in the driveway or like at the local gym. But when he would play on his school teams or his club teams, and I would see a different version of him, it was more conservative and just tentative and hesitant. So I was trying, and I had been for years, like I was trying to find ways to motivate him. And I don't know, I just had this weird moment where I realized that all of my advice to him in terms of basketball, like aggressiveness and like being more assertive, was directly applicable to like my career. And I had
Mm.
not done that myself. So I was like, I'm being a little hypocritical here. And so in that moment, I have no idea why that translated into creating content on LinkedIn, but that's a month later, that's what started happening. So, and here we are. So that was kind of the moment of clarity or light bulb moment, or however to best phrase that. I'm not sure.
Yeah, that's awesome. And that's a cool story, which leads us into we're going to talk about storytelling today, and how that's kind of one of your superpowers and some advice that you can give people on how they can weave storytelling into their content creation and their outreach and just their entire content strategy. So talk to me a little bit about how you knew storytelling was one of your superpowers and what value you find in it.
Yeah, I think I kind of take it for granted. I think it's one of those things when you're good at something, you just assume everybody can do it. And in these last couple of years and talking to people in general and especially clients, I realize that people struggle in two ways. One is they struggle to identify their stories, or they don't think something is a story. They're like, oh, it's not that big a deal, or nobody will care. So that's kind of part one. Part two then is once you identify them, then you need to be able to tell them in a way that draws people in. It doesn't always have to be like, I did this and I did this and I did this and I did this. Like it's not always like that. And the analogy I use is like a trailer for, obviously a Netflix show, right? They typically don't show you the first minute of episode one and then you decide, right? They show you bits and pieces. So it's a little bit all over the place. And then they try to hook you in and you're like, all right, I want to know what happened. And they want you to play the episode. So especially for content like LinkedIn specifically, right? Your only goal of your opening hook is to get them to click more, to see the post. So if you have a story, you don't necessarily have to start at the beginning. You can kind of start at the middle to create that curiosity or intrigue, and then they see more. You can fill in the rest of it. So I think just as you're creating content, whether it's general marketing or written content or blogs, I always try to think of it. I challenge clients to really, before you publish it, like think, is there a story behind it, or do I have a client story or a story of for myself or a partner, kids, or my neighbor, like something that ties into it because there's so much AI content now. We don't need any more how-to lists. We don't need any more 7 steps to optimize X, right? Like we can get all that with GPT and YouTube and Google. Like there's no shortage of information. Like we can all find out instantly how to do almost anything. What we can't do, and what GPT can't do yet, is they can't tell our lived experience, right? It doesn't have the ability to do that. Only we can do that. So I really encourage people to like tap into that and tell the story because that's what draws people in and that's what makes us relatable. And ultimately we do business with people, right? Like no matter what you're selling, what product or service or anything, at the end of the day, we're choosing to do business like with people, and typically it's people that we like and relate to.
Yeah, totally. I mean, stories definitely resonate more with people than just random facts all the time. And that's a
Right.
good point about how you don't always have to lead with the beginning of the story, especially when you're creating content and coming up with a hook that you want to pull people into that part, like to be part of that story. Like you're inviting people to participate rather than just listen to like this happened to me. Like, you know, one day I woke up and like nobody cares about that part.
Like I'll give you an example. Like the first time, it ties into racing because we talked about running. Done running and triathlons. I've done a couple Spartan races. When I did the first Spartan race, which was about a year and a half ago, the opening line of my hook, or when I did a post about the race, I wrote something to the effect of like, um, the woman said, "Sign here. Uh, you're promising not to sue us if you die." Like I wrote something like that. So I didn't say anything about Spartan race. I didn't say anything about anything else. Like that's literally it. So if you read that, you're probably gonna be like, oh, like that's weird. Like you don't usually sign something and somebody's like, you know, you could die doing this and you're not going to sue us. And then from there, I went in. So like I didn't say like, I drove up to said race and then we parked in the parking lot and then I walked over to the tent and then I got my waiver. Like that, that probably was like the ninth thing that happened on that day. And I started with that simply because like when it happened, it like hit me when she said that. I was like, oh, like, I didn't realize death was an option here today. Um, so, so like thinking of things like that, where you're trying to create the intrigue. You're going to tell the story later, but you don't always have to tell it, A to Z.
Yeah, for sure. Because I mean, even if you opened with, I participated in a Spartan race, like that's pretty interesting to a certain group of people. But there's also a lot of people that would be like, well, race, not interested. I don't run,
There's,
scrolling past that. But the line that you used, I'm sure most people would be like, huh, I want to hear
yeah,
more about that
right.
story.
Yeah, that's not common. What what was going on there? Yeah. So yeah, so it's just thinking about examples like that and things of that nature. I think a lot of us we have more stories than we give ourselves credit for. Um, and I think just again, trying to identify them and tell them as much as we can.
Yeah, I agree. I've found that on LinkedIn personally has been really powerful. And it took me a while to come around to the idea of it because, and I think a lot of people have probably had this experience. Like, we don't want to be like too vulnerable on LinkedIn because then people are going to see that we're not perfect, maybe. Like it's interesting. Like for me, marketing is my second career, and I didn't really start saying that and like telling that story on LinkedIn until this year because I was like, I don't want people to know that I haven't been doing this my whole life, like, because then maybe they won't think I'm an expert. But really, I've found that when I started telling that story, a lot of people relate to it in many different ways. Nobody has like the exact same story as me, but everyone's got their own version of it.
Yeah, for sure. And I think it's actually so pretty normal these days where it's rare to just do one thing when you start out and then just do that forever. Like those days are for the most part over, whether it's by choice or not. So I think it adds to your background as you have done other things because there's experience and learning in that. It's typically there's always some part of it that you can use to apply lessons learned or things not to do, or like there's so many different ways that can go. And then that just helps you be better at marketing. Honestly, marketing is like our lives are marketing, right? Like we're kind of always like marketing in some, like in one way or another, whether you're looking for a job, trying to go a business, you're looking for a partner, like you're marketing yourself or your skills or your personality or something about you, like kind of all the time. So I feel like we're all doing marketing to a certain level, probably a lot more than we realize.
For sure. Yeah, yeah. I resonate with that. And now that's like all my brain does. When I don't know if you relate to this, when I go on a run now, like I'm listening to music, I'm out on the trail, and then I'm like, oh, this would be a great idea for a LinkedIn post. Like that's my that's my new life.
Yeah. Once you start seeing life through content, it kind of takes over.
It really does. it's kind of nice, but it's also like, I could think about things that aren't LinkedIn. So
Exactly.
funny. Um, okay. So speaking about LinkedIn and storytelling, how have you navigated? LinkedIn has changed a lot recently and over the years, but how have you navigated telling stories on a platform that's traditionally been more like corporate and professional?
Yeah, I think for me, since I'd never posted when I had traditional job, I think it was easier for me to tap into not playing by those types of rules. When I started posting in July of 23, I did not have the intention I didn't set out to have this become my full-time, work. It was really just, I wanted a creative outlet and stories were a big part of it because I felt like I had a lot of stories. So I was like, all right, well, I didn't have any other social media. So I didn't have Facebook or Instagram or anything like that. Like LinkedIn was the only social media account that I had. And I used it like most people, which is just sat, it was a virtual resume that I did almost nothing with. Um, so I never, I'm not sure I even realized kind of what you're talking about, where I think when you're an employee, you're a little bit nervous to post a lot and to share because obviously you don't want your employer to see it and think maybe you're like leaving or looking to leave or networking. Um, so I think there's with that, but I mean, I was working when I started it, but I didn't like that job and I wasn't very good at it. Your butts fell out. Um, so honestly, I didn't have any, I didn't have any fear that they were going to see it and be like, hey, what are you doing?
Yeah.
Cause I think we both would have been pretty happy if that had ended earlier. Um, now I know that like a lot of people aren't in that boat. So I didn't really think about it. I don't think it applies to me. I do get it. Obviously, like you said, there are certain lines, we're not telling like the intimate details of everything, right? There are certain, boundaries, but I do think it's opened up. And I do think because of AI and the rise of so many, AI generated pieces
Sorry.
of content, the dog is not happy.
She's very mad. 1 second. Yeah, she's very mean. I'll show you.
Oh, wow. Is that a Yorkie?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's
Yep.
super
She's
cute.
14-year-old little old
Oh,
lady.
wow.
She's very, very mad about something, but she'll get over it shortly, hopefully. So you were talking about how there's been obviously a huge rise in AI generated content on everywhere, but particularly on LinkedIn.
Yeah, and I think when we tell stories, it's a way for them to know that it's us, right? Like again, there aren't many prompts. It doesn't know it only know the AI only knows what you're giving it. So unless you're telling it your life story, it doesn't know it. So it can't generate that. And nobody else for the most part can either. So I think when you tell the personal stories, not only does it allow you to be relatable, but it kind of proves that you are writing your own stuff. Not that you can't use AI to help out with content. I don't mean that, but just not having it be carbon copy, just, copy paste, GPT or Copilot or whatever, into whatever, wherever you're posting content and doing it. In fact, I saw somebody sent me a screenshot where someone had posted on LinkedIn and they clearly had copy and pasted it from, some AI site because at the bottom they left the part in and it said something like, would you like me to also generate like an Instagram like piece two or something, right? And they like didn't realize it.
Yeah.
Um, so, and that happens. I mean, obviously people are doing that. So again, not that every post needs to be a story about your life, but there's ways like I had a recent client she wanted to tell a story about, it was a client that came to her from another, firm and she was going to use a different analogy. And I was like, why don't you just tell the story about like how you found them, why they weren't happy where they were, and then why they chose to do business with you. I was like, that in and of itself is a story. And it's a way to sell yourself without just coming out and saying like, we're great. And these are all the things we do for our clients, because you're going to talk about the benefits, the features and benefits of your firm over that competitor and why they chose you. So it's a built-in sales post, but it's not just a standard like, hey, this is what we do, book a call. Um, Whereas you tell the story about like I found them and they weren't happy and we talked to them and this is how we separated ourselves and that. So like even things like that. So it's not necessarily a personal story about like her life. It's about her business and about a client in an effort to get other clients. So, I think a lot of people struggle with like sales or converting posts because they feel a little bit awkward, or you don't want to just write like, hey, do business with me or whatever way. Whereas that was a perfect sales post, but it would not come across salesy like at all. You're literally just telling a story of how you got a client. So it's just things like that. Like if you, and it might not always be the case, but if you can start to think in terms of that, I think um, it's just a better way to sell.
Yeah, absolutely. I feel you on that. I've been working on trying to create better content to get inbound leads myself. And something I liked about your profile when I was talking to you on LinkedIn was that you through your coaching help people create content systems, which is something that I'm working on developing for both myself and my agency. And I like how you mentioned in your, I think it was in your bio, that it's like non-pushy sales tactics, which is just what you described in that story about how they were storytelling about why they chose to work with that agency over another
Yeah.
one. I think that's really important and probably a really big push for the direction content needs to be moving these days to be impactful.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, most of us don't want to be just straight up sold to or pitched or like, here's my thing. Do you want it type deal, right? Like that's for the most part turns off. I think it turns off most people. But if you're building relationships, you're not all of your content is sales content. So you're doing the well-rounded content, personal stories, background, expertise, what you do, why you do it, like all that kind of stuff, right? Like that's kind of what I mean by system is you want to, no matter where you are in the content journey, um, you want some type of well-rounded structure to what you're talking about so that because people are coming in and out, they're not seeing every post. So, that's why you do have to be repetitive, but you're every month, every quarter, you're saying a lot of similar stuff, but you're doing it in a slightly different way. You're building that relationship through your background, like what you've done, people you've worked with, projects you've worked on. That starts to build credibility. And then, through messaging and whether it's live events or just sending DMs or coffee chats, whatever, however people choose to do that, you're building relationships and then um, those can become clients, they can become referral partners. But obviously in marketing, there's not just one way to do it. You mentioned inbound, which is obviously becoming, harder and harder on LinkedIn, especially with, impressions are way down, reach is way down. So it's much more difficult now to get people to reach out, you know, without any
Mm-hmm.
previous interaction.
Yeah, it is for sure. But like you mentioned, if you are building out kind of that system, then people will at least start to get familiar with you and kind of know what to expect, know your personality, know what your offerings are. And you do have to be really repetitive, which is hard. Like when I'm editing a video that I'm like, I said the same thing like 7 times already this year, but you know that not everyone's gonna watch it.
Well, not only that, but I think the old school marketing was like 7 times, like people needed to see or hear it, beat it 7 times. And now I've read that it's closer to like 30 to 40 times simply because the onslaught of messages that we receive, because obviously all the social media platforms and traditional marketing like television, radio, and all that kind of stuff, like podcasts, and like, there's a lot of noise, and so we don't remember nearly like as much as we think people think that we do. Like we do because we're thinking about it a lot, but to the person out there, like they're not living with it, they're not thinking about it, so they have to hear it like quite a bit. So yeah, for us, it's like, oh my gosh, I said this so many times. Everybody knows this, right? Like actually they don't.
Yeah, totally. That makes a lot of sense too. I hadn't heard that statistic yet, that we have to see and hear it more times, but totally. I mean, there's just so much content out there everywhere, literally everywhere these days that it would make sense that that number of like kind of the frequency of touches has gone up too.
Yeah, and then I just came across this. I hadn't heard this until recently, but like the average sale is made after I want to say it's like the fifth follow up. That was a new one for me recently. Because I think that's another area where myself for sure, but I think a lot of people probably struggle is like you don't want to bother people. Like you've already made an offer and they're like, I'm not sure, or think about it, or I'm getting quotes or whatever. And so then you follow up like one time, you're like, hey, checking in. Maybe they're still kind of in the same boat. I think a lot of people probably just like stop there and be like, ah, they're not interested. Um, and then you just move on. But I thought that was really interesting, like 5 times. Like it seems to me like really bothering them. But then sometimes I guess it takes like that, those types of reminders to, to get people to move forward. So I thought that was eye opening for sure. And it's like, oh, I'm definitely not doing.
No, I don't think I'm doing quite that frequency either. But interesting because just last month or this month maybe, we started using a program that we send documents through for clients to sign. And I noticed that a couple of them that were sent through that specific program, like I sent them the document, like, here are package options, sign it when you're ready, if you're ready, kind of thing. And then the program itself was sending like follow-up reminders, like, reminder, you have this document to sign, reminder, you have this document to sign. And a couple of the clients that I like was not expecting to close at all, like signed it because the thing kept reminding them like for me.
That's like
So
this is a perfect example.
yeah.
Persistence. Just like, hey, you haven't done this yet. Why have you done this yet? Do it. Just do it.
Yeah. Yeah. So I think I'll keep using that, that program and let
That's
it
awesome.
do a little bit of
Yeah.
automatic prompting for me.
Yeah. It's like a very soft, like just a reminder, like, hey, this is waiting on you. Like, what are you waiting for?
Hmm.
Rinse and repeat. And finally you're like, yeah, let's do it.
Yeah.
Awesome. I
It was
love it.
like an accidental sales tactic that I used. Awesome. Okay. Well, before we wrap up, wanted to see if you had any advice for people who might be in a similar place to where you were before, kind of feeling stuck in their corporate role or just not really happy with what they're doing in their career.
Yeah, I think, I tried a lot of the traditional stuff. So I hired kind of standard, what I would call traditional career coaches. I saw therapists. I read a bunch of personal growth, self-help type books. Um, and those were helpful, but I used those as kind of crutches. I was like procrastination via learning. So I wanted somebody else to do it for me, or I wanted them to give me the answers. And then it kind of wouldn't happen that way. So I would just kind of keep doing other things. But the ultimate, what really unlocked it was the actual act of creating content. So it was taking action. So that'll be different for everyone, but I feel like if you're out there and you're stuck, there's probably something that you've been thinking about doing or wanting to try. But you've either talked yourself out of it or you think it's already been done. Or whatever, you can come up with a lot of excuses. I would say just start taking small steps towards like whatever you feel like. It might not be a new career. I mean, it doesn't have to be starting an online business. It could be anything. But there's something that you're inside, you feel some kind of a push or you're drawn to or you want to try. I would say just, you know, start trying to make that happen. And like I said, it might be little steps, could be big. It doesn't really matter, but you'll learn more. You'll get closer. And you also might find out it's not what you want to do because some things look great from a distance. And then you get in and you try them and you're like, oh, I didn't realize it was like this. But then that's good because then you can scratch that off your list, right? So that's also positive, and you move to the next thing. So I would say intentional action as much as you can over and over to really expedite, the learning process. Can't get there by thinking. I tried, doesn't work.
That's so true. Awesome. Well, thank you for that. And thank you for all of your insights and advice today. I really, really enjoyed having you on, David. Thank you so much for taking the time to chat with me.
Yeah, thanks, Kayla. Like I said, grateful for the connection and this appearance on your show. Thank you so much.
Thank you. I'll link David's all of his things in the show notes so you guys can connect and follow him. And we'll talk to you later. Bye.